so that he will gain happiness in this life and hereafter. With this freedom, he deserves to be called good or bad, depending on which acts he finally chooses. This predicate cannot be applied to other creatures, for example, to stones, the moon, the stars, the trees, and even animals, simply because they cannot choose their actions. Only man, due to his ability to choose, can properly be called good or bad, or in short, to be called moral being. It is very important that morality related to the freedom of choice. The consequences of his ability to choose is that he bears his responsibility for whatever he chooses, realizing that whatever acts he finally chooses will create certain consequences that he should accept as his reward and punishment. Why is ethics called the art of living? In Islamic philosophy, the purpose of creating ethics is to attain happiness. It is very clear, very clearly reflected in the title of various ethical books, such as Al-Farabi's Tahsil Sa'adah, the attainment of happiness, or Al-Amiri, Abu Hassan Al-Amiri Sa'adah wal-Is'ad, the happiness and to make someone happy. Some Muslim philosophers have called this ethic as the art of living happily, or just as the art of living. For by applying what is taught in ethics, inshallah, man will acquire his salvation and happiness here in this life and hereafter. So this is very important to say that ethics will bring happiness to man. If you ask someone, what do you like to do to get? They said, I will be happy. I want to be happy. But how to achieve the happiness? It is actually offered by ethics. As the art of living, ethics has formulated for us certain doctrines and methods. If we follow its teaching consistently, we will live a serene, tranquil, and blessed life. The ethical teaching will surely discuss certain moral virtues, al-fada'il, to be followed, and moral vices, rada'il, to be avoided. As for the method that it used to build good character is reflected in so-called the golden means, or midway, or the good character or virtues are the one put in the middle between two extremes. So, for example, the courage, as-shuja', is in the middle between rashness, tahawur, and cowardice, and generosity, as-sahu, is between extravagance and stinginess. What is the relation between ethics and happiness? This is very important. It has been mentioned before that the goal of ethics is to attain happiness. The question is, what is the relation between ethics and happiness? Ethics is a scientific discipline that deals with the question of good and bad. It wants us to be good persons, and only a good person, according to the philosopher, will surely be happy. A good person means the one who is mentally healthy. And the healthy man is the one who is free from any heart or spiritual diseases, such as envy, arrogance, glorification, show-off, shirk, and so on. A person whose heart is healthy will feel tranquil, peaceful, pleased, happy. Just like a person who is physically healthy, he will enjoy his food or drink and can work perfectly well. If someone tells you that he is already a good person, but he still does not feel happy, you can say that he is not being ethically good enough, for he still suffers from certain mental diseases that he is not aware of. I just want to summarize this. What are the degree of happiness? For philosopher, there are at least 5 degree of happiness: physical pleasure, mental happiness, intellectual happiness, moral happiness, and spiritual happiness. I will not, you can read it in the paper. Why is it that ethics is called spiritual medicines? At-Tib al-Ruhani. It was called by Abu Bakr al-Razi. This is very important, very famous physician in Islam. But he also wrote a book called the At-Tib Ar-Ruhani. So it is very significant that, you know, you have both medical medicine, also spiritual medicine. Because as the function of medicine to preserve the health of our body, so also the function of ethics is to preserve the health of our mentality, heart or soul. Mishkawi in his monumental works, Tahdhib al-Akhlaq, discussed two functions of ethics as the spiritual medicine: preservative or preventive and curative. To preserve mental health, he gave us 5 tips as follows, for example: to select some good friends, to exercise our rational faculty, like, you know, body exercise is good for our health, but also rational exercise is also very important for our mental health. To consistently do what we have planned to do. Sometimes you have a very good plan, but in the end you don't do it, you know, because you subdue to your bad manner. But you know, do not ever wake the sleeping line up. This is, don't, you know, encourage your nafs. Yeah. So if you wake up the sleeping giant and he wake up, then it is very difficult for you to escape. So if he's still sleeping, just pass by, you know, quietly. Don't wake it up. And also the 5th one, find out our own weakness. This is very important. And philosophers always say that finding your weakness is very difficult. So what to do? Find a very good friends to tell what is our weakness. But if you did not succeed, then look for the enemy. Your enemy will tell you, you know, so many weaknesses of you. So this is to show how important it is to find the weakness. Because if you don't find your weakness, how can you improve yourself? As for our mental diseases, Al-Kindi in his Art of Dispelling Sorrow, this very important work, the Al-Hila Lidaf Al-Ahzan, he talked about, you know, sorrow as the one of the mental disease, and how to cure it. He discusses very long in the book. And also the other books by Nasiruddin Tusi, the Nasir and Ethics, prescribes for us some very useful prescription to cure them in a philosophical way. So why this philosophical way? It means it's actually can be applied to not only Muslim. This is universal. The philosophy in this sense is universal. Everybody can take it. How can we apply ethics to other fields? This is very important also. As mentioned before, ethics is one of practical sciences, which an individual as its subject matter. Its purpose is how to build a good person, a shakhsiyah, having praiseworthy character, or akhlaq al-mahmuda, as a condition to attain to happiness. 4 of these characters are temperance, ifa, courage, suja', wisdom, hikmah, and finally, adala. This is justice. Actually, justice is, you know, if you get 3, all of them together, it will become justice. So justice is the peak of all these things. All these practical sciences, including economic and politics. So in the ulum al-amaliyah, in the ethics, practical science include ethics, economics, and politics. So all these practical sciences, including economic and politics, belong to ethics. That is why Nasiruddin Tusi and Ad-Dawani, Jalaluddin Ad-Dawani, incorporated economics and politics into their ethical works. When the subject matter moves from individual to household, it is called economics. If it is moved to society as a whole, it is called politics. Here, good ethics should be the basis for both economics and politics. Maybe you can call it as applied ethics. So morality should be the base of economic and politics. This is very important. Therefore, the value cultivated from ethics such as courage, honesty, wisdom, justice should be applied and serve as the basis for economic and political action and policies. These are certainly different from modern and contemporary economics and politics, which do not consider important moral and metaphysical basis. What is the meaning of saying that man is social and political being? All Greek philosophers such as Al-Farabi, Miskawi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rus agreed that man is essentially political being, meaning that he cannot live alone and in isolation. He needs others to fulfill his subsistence needs for clothes, food, houses, even arts and education. He can attain to his perfection and happiness without help and cooperation with others. Therefore, for this purpose, man needs a political association, a city or even state to make people prosperous and to facilitate them in attaining to their happiness and perfection. And Al-Farabi in his book Al-Madinah Al-Fadila said the purpose of building a nation is to make possible for the people to get their happiness. Very important. Indeed. Miskawi in his Tahzib al-Akhlaq criticized people who said that the term insan, human being, derived from the word nisyan, forgetful. He said it's not. Instead, he said that the term insan comes from the word uns, which means intimacy. Intimacy. For man is God's creature who needs the intimacy. That is love and friendship. Man needs friends to assist him in acquiring his daily life, without whom he will never prosper and never attain his happiness. He might die if there is no one to help him. According to Miskawi, Islam as a religion has fostered love and friendship among people. Take for example, daily prayer gathering with neighbors will foster the friendship and socialization among close neighbors. And weekly gathering for Jumu'ah prayer will do the same thing for the greater circle. And the Eid al-Fitr or Adha prayer will definitely foster yet a greater circle of friendship. And ultimately, the pilgrimage or Hajj to Mecca will surely facilitate us to make friends with international Muslim community. So he looked at this, the function of the ibadah in fostering the friendship. What is the role of ethics? What is the role ethics can play in the community building? To build an individual morality is a supreme important and should be sought seriously. So when we are talking about community development, it doesn't mean that you personal is not important. Yeah? That is why a number of philosophers and Sufis spent a quite substantial period of time to undergo a spiritual discipline, riyada, and purification of the soul, tazkiyat an-nafs, such as done by Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali needed 11 years, and Mullah Sadra need 15 to 16 years, in remote and quiet places. And this turned out to be very fruitful since by doing so, they composed hundreds of substantial works in philosophy, sciences, and Sufism. Unfortunately, most of us living in modern time no longer practice this contemplative life, has no substantial work or depth. One person, for example, Al-Ghazali composed about 480 books, 400 more books. But living in isolation, uzla, is not the ideal way of life in Islam, if it is practiced for good and become a lifestyle. No. If someone has reached his moral perfection, he should go back to society and build a good morality of others. First his own family, of course, and then community at large. Maulana Rumi once says that real happiness will not be attained to just through personal perfection, but to the common perfection of the entire society. Rumi also does not agree with people who live a hermit life to seek moral virtue, such as passion and justice. How can, he said, someone become patient if he lives alone in cave? Patient to whom? Again, how can he be just if he is alone? Just to whom? One's practice and justice should be proven and tested among people, among his family and community. The real happiness, according to his belief, will be achieved in his self-assertion in his community. He should be the role model for whoever lives in his milieu, and build not only personal but also communal virtue and perfection. What is the role of ethics in education? Ethics plays important role in educating children and youth, since children education is one of principal pillar in another branch of practical science, that is economics. So economics include not only finance matters, but also education of the children. In addition to finance matter, economic also emphasize importance of children education as a part of household management. So it's different from ethics now, economics now, who doesn't care about the child education. The duty to our children is not only to provide them with knowledge, but also to teach them good manners, such as table manner, and tell them that eating is a kind of medicine having certain doses, and it shouldn't be less or more. Otherwise the medicine will not become medicine. The boys should be encouraged to wear one-colored clothes, to show the moderation and so on. Ethics becomes so crucial in educating children as principal parts of the management of household, and of course it can be extended to that of school. In science education, Muslim philosophers such as Ikhwanul Sofa very often connect physics and mathematics to refinement of character. Tazibul akhlaq, for instance, geometrical proportion and nisbah al-handasiyah with the way we stand and sit down. Well, arithmetical proportion, nisbah al-arithmetikiyah, with the proper manner of writing and speaking. If you want to have the good writing, so you have to proportion in writing. For example, you can draw alif, whatever you want, but ba cannot be longer than alif, for example. And if you have a good speech, you have to know how many consonants and how many vocals. So your speaking will be rhythmic. And all these are the example of application of ethics in science education in Islamic perspective. I think this is last slide. What is the role of ethics in curing moral and social diseases? We know of not just physical diseases, but also all moral diseases, either individual or social. Moral diseases are related to mental diseases, which are brought about by the bad character. This is the the relation between moral and diseases. Ethics, of course, play a very critical role, for it is a scientific discipline which deals specifically with good and bad characters. Preserve good characters we have already had and recover them if they are lost. As a discipline that encourages people to have a good characters, ethics would certainly play an important role in curing mental diseases by way of avoiding bad characters, which are the prime sources of all mental diseases, both individual and social. And finally, ethics as us to be wise, courageous, temperance, and just. And this feature can be and should be applied not only to an individual, but more importantly to any leaders of community or even countries at large. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. Can I invite all speakers to be sitting in the front? Yes. Okay, alhamdulillah, both speakers have presented the experience in their fields. So I'm sure some of the people from the audience wants to ask questions. So can I invite questions from the floor, please? So make sure you introduce yourself before you ask a question, and please as brief as possible. Any question? Please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to firstly thank Professor Mulyadhi for a very comprehensive and detailed presentation on ethics. And I'm not sure about others, but it made my job much easier because then I don't have to cover all these philosophical references that you've made. I just want to ask a very simple question, and I thought it's quite pertinent to the things that I'm going to do tomorrow as well. On your slide 13, you talk about what is the role ethics can play in community building. But the presentation focused on the individual and not the community, or the individual and not the society. I mean, we know in philosophy, in psychology particularly, the individuals, when they act themselves, will be very different when they come together as a community. There's a process called de-individuation. You may not be a bad person individually, but when you are with other people who do bad things, you also will join in and do all those bad things as well. So I'm just trying to make the link between individual morality or individual ethics with community ethics, if you like. How do we actually help the community to understand the values and therefore create the happiness that we desire? So I thought if you can give us, shed some light, I'll most appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yes, actually, Professor Aslam, ibda binafsik. So how can you teach morality if you are himself, you are not the good character? So I think the seriousness of the purifying the character, like by Al-Ghazali, is to make sure that you already have the good moral. And once you have that good moral, you should, teach others, especially your family, then you're a member of your society. Because this is the purpose of ethics, to make people happy. First yourself, and then your family, and then your society. And that is why Rumi said, you cannot have the real happiness unless you and your society become good. And in Islamic philosophical perspective, the ethics is matters of the individual perfectness. Then when you go to the family, they discuss in economics. So economics is actually the extension of ethics in the member of family. And then politics is the more extension more to other people. So if you are good as an individual and you have good family and then you have good society, this is the ultimate purpose of the ethics. So I'm talking about how to extend your good moral to your family and society. Thank you.
Okay. Any question, please?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have two short questions, one for Professor Muhammad Aslam and the other is for Professor Mulyadhi. Professor Muhammad mentioned a lot of concepts, including taskhir, falah, maslaha, taqwa, akhlaq, adl, ihsan, mardatullah. What about the concept of al-birr? I can't see it in your wonderful presentation. For Professor Mulyadhi, Professor Mulyadhi talked about moral perfection and self-purification for the attainment of happiness. I just want to ask, do you think that moral perfection and self-purification and even the attainment of happiness are very relative? Thank you.
Yeah, my answer will be very short. I mean, I did state in the beginning that we didn't cover all concepts. We picked and chose those that we thought. But certainly al-birr is there. Al-birr wa taqwa, cooperate with one another. So we will certainly talk about this as a very important. In fact, even the concept of cooperation. Yeah, ta'awun would be the choice rather than competition. And when you're building an Islamic economic framework, or a framework from an Islamic perspective, our scholars gave greater emphasis on ta'awun. Yeah. Although we are not denying that competition has an important place to play, but competition for what? So you will argue it's fastabihul khairat. So you compete for what is khair and the best. So certainly we didn't choose, there are many other important concepts that have to be put into the framework. We just focused on those, very few relating to the concept of man, nature. But al-birr, of course, is definitely there.
Thank you. Can you answer?
Okay. Dr. Hassan talk about the relation between purification of the soul and the happiness. It is in Al-Munqidh min Az-Zalal, Al-Ghazali talk about whether he can go to paradise or not after he achieving, the rectorate position in the Baghdad. And the answer is negative, because what he have done so far, what he has done so far is not for Allah. This is based on shirk, for your ego. And so that's why he left Baghdad, to purify himself, his soul. And because if you still suffer from certain mental diseases, the happiness will not come. And it's very amazing, that he described 13 types of riyad. 13 types of riyad. And he realized it when he experienced, he do riyad al-nafs. Because otherwise you cannot differentiate. You feel that I'm already good. But the philosopher said, if you feel good, you claim that you are good but not happy, it means there's still, this is there. So how to make sure that you are free from the diseases? This is the Tazkiyatul Anfus is very important concept on that. So if you are pure, that means you are get rid of all the mental diseases, and you deserve to be happy. Like if you don't have any physical disease, then you will be very healthy and pleasant. You can enjoy everything. So this is the connection between Tazkiyatul Anfus.
Okay, thank you. Okay, please.
Yes, I have two questions, please, to Dr. Aslam. You put about man-nature relationships, taqwa versus rationality. I just couldn't understand, because to me, rationality is part of taqwa too. If you are not rational, I think you are not a taqwa person. The second for Dr. Mulyadhi, when you said the aim of ethics to achieve happiness, this is really, very strong and brave statement. Of course, you got it authentically. But now we can just base on this maxim as if mostly Muslim living now on the surface of the earth are not ethical, I think. Because they are all mostly suffering. Look at the Rohingya, look at those Palestinians, look at this, all almost, yeah. I think, can you say they are not ethical? And ethics or barbaric or what you want to say?
Yeah.
Thank you.
First question.
Thank you very much. This was also one of the main discussion points with Hafaz when he was arguing.
Yeah.
And we said the same thing to him. We didn't see that there was, these two are categories separate. Except that he argued very well in his thesis and also in the paper that what he actually means is this rational economic man. The word rationality there should actually probably be replaced with characteristics of rational economic man, in which rational means a certain thing.
Profit.
Yeah, talking about the material side, the maximization side. Whereas taqwa, you are right to point out, you need to be rational. But the rational means something else. Even in taqwa, you need to be rational. But what you mean by rational, it's not the rational of the rational economic man. Because the rational of the rational economic man is only based on my own self-interest. Whereas in the case of taqwa, the rational action cannot be based only on your own self-interest. It has to be based also on the needs of others, etc. So we are actually having to redefine the components of what goes into taqwa. So all I can say, maybe you will have to get exposure to the article of the journal, and secondly, maybe to speak to Hafaz and ask him why he.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you answer?
Okay, I think philosophically, yes, they are not ethical. Yeah, because because they say that if you are ethically good, you must be happy. Yeah. But sometimes if you have the disease, say envy, the enviness, you won't be happy if you don't have that. Such as when your tooth is, have a problem, the food that you eat, maybe it won't be very pleasant, not because the food is wrong, but because you don't have means to enjoy this. So also if your health, your soul is healthy, then it will be happy. If you feel that you are good already but not happy, so this ethically is not good. Has not been good. So I think this.
I just want. It's not my area to get in, but I just would like to add. Sometimes people may not know that they are not happy, right? And I think this is very big problem. I think sometimes in the world today, they may have the wrong things in their list of what makes them happy. So there may be people, maybe in the Muslim world also, who don't know that they are not ethical, but they do not know that they are not happy. So this is very, it would be added complexity to that.
This complexity,
very philosophical. Okay, is there any more questions from the floor? Okay, please, Doctor, you raise your hand first. Okay, sorry.
Thank you very much. It's not questions, but just to share that sometimes people do not know after happiness what will happen, because they are happy, but I just want to be contextual in the case of some Buddhists and also Chinese-oriented Buddhists in Thailand. They are worried about themselves when they will die, because the price of the kubur, it is very high now in Thailand, especially in the municipal areas like in Bangkok. So you have to plan for dying. So they will get, after happy of doing and getting a lot of profits for their business. But they are thinking of, they want to be at the closest place with the family, which is in the place that they stay when they are alive. But they are thinking of, when I die, where am I going to put? Because the price in Bangkok is very expensive. So sometimes, they have to move for 200 kilometers to be buried. So again, at the time they are going to say, no. At the time they are going to, to just say bye-bye. That period of time, the sorrow will come again. The sadness will come again. How you can explain from our universal explanation of that, of happiness?
Suffering. Can I just add that this is also the case in Vietnam, because I was there, they were telling the same thing. Okay. It's very costly to die at the grave. So they're very sad because they have to die.
Okay, Professor, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what we are trying to do is to define what are the concepts and ideas which is good and necessary as a contribution to the development. It's kind of disturbing also to see the fact, as mentioned earlier, that even when there's a concept, people are not following. Of course, this is another question. Perhaps we need some other instruments to make people motivated to do the things. But I'd like to ask to Professor Aslam particularly, maybe as we are now trying to discuss something of ideology for development practice. I understand as a layman, it consider myself a student. You know, we have this work by Dr. Chapra about Dr. Omar Chapra about Maqasid Sharia and development. Perhaps you can shed some lights on this matter, and I think it's a good work that has been done, and where we can go from there, perhaps to define and to bring this kind of concept thing that can give us a contribution, perhaps more. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You know, just maybe also to connect to what Prof. Osman was mentioning earlier about the visit to Jeddah, and people were talking about how to measure progress and development in Muslim countries. We are actually now also working in this area. We're trying to talk about how to measure development using, you know, among others, the works of Dr. Chapra. And just 3 days ago, we were with the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia, as well as the Economic Planning Unit. And we made a presentation on this, developing a benchmark based on Maqasid Sharia. And they listened, they were very, you know, interested with the idea, but they had very important observations. 2 things. One, they said, firstly, we already have a Malaysian Quality of Life Index, and another party has come up with also their own version of Happiness Index. So they were asking, how is your Maqasid Sharia inputs going to complement or improve? Or are we proposing a separate index? And they were not in favor of a separate index. They would like it to be incorporated into this Malaysian Quality of Life Index. But then they said the second thing. If you do incorporate it into the Malaysian Quality of Life Index, you will have to take away all reference to Maqasid Sharia. Yeah, so you just have to call it, you know, protection of life, without using the terms. Why? Because you will have a difficult time trying to get the buy-in. In other words, trying to make the policymakers take, you know,